Hello, dear listener. A quick note. We originally recorded this episode as an Instagram Live before we transitioned to more professional sound equipment, so the sound quality isn't as good as more recent episodes. We hope you still enjoy.
So we have a fun thing to talk about today, and it's a big one.
It is kind of it can be a heavy topic, but we're gonna try and keep it um light, applicable. We're talking about things that we want on our deathbed. What do we want to have done? And if we didn't do those things, maybe we would regret it. Right.
So we could call it a bucket list. I think I'm Wednesday Adams on the inside a little bit. So I was like, going into this topic, I've definitely got to keep it light, or I could get real heavy. So I'm gonna just concentrate on that. Let's call it a bucket list, kind of thing, I suppose. But yeah, I wanted to ask our friends questions about that as well, and just kind of talk about what are the things. I think for me they change. What are the things that you feel like this is on the list?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Things that are important to me. I think for me, well, there are two different, there's kind of the light bucket list things of yeah, I want to do this. And oh, I want to go to Spain. And oh, I want to date. And then there's the things underneath that are yeah, but at the end of the day, what are the things that are this mattered more than anything? And I love traveling, but if it meant that I didn't get to Spain or wherever, Prince Edward Island is on my bucket list. It really is, because I'm a huge Anne of Green Gables freak. Um, I mean, I would say traveling is really important for me, just because even Seth and I took a family reunion vacation to Indiana, which is like 2 states up, and just the difference in culture, although minute, it's so good to be around people that aren't exactly like you. And then so much more so that's compounded by being in a different country, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's pretty important. I want to see things, but I want to know things. I want to ask different people different questions, people that are totally different from me, and see how they would respond. Because I think that's fascinating. I mean, in the immediate short term, the things that are important to me, providing a safe space for the people that I love, my boys, um, my partner, those kinds of things are really important. I don't know. What about you?
Um, I think so. When you're talking about bucket list things, it's like you said, I think it's lighter that it's what do I want to accomplish, and it feels more like in the now,
Yeah.
right? And I think I want my life to be full of travel. Also, I want to see everything I can possibly see, and I think performing. I want my life to be full of music, and whether that's my music or other people's music that I'm helping them with. But I think the crazy thing about thinking bucket list light is then you're like, at the end of that, what things are on my bucket lists now that I'll look back on and be like, I'm so glad I spent time doing that.
Right.
For me, yeah, it's music, it's travel. I want more knowledge of human beings. And I think that it's because I crave connection and I value it really deeply. And so I think, I think seeing more people, seeing how more people live, seeing if there's an impact I can make at the places I go, just to see what I can give. And I think that's my deathbed stuff too, you know? Um,
Yeah. It's about it. I mean, really, if it isn't about other people, I'm kind of like, well, what's what is the point? I can't just live my life just I mean, because others, when you're investing in others, I feel like it never comes back, that there's not a return on that investment. Whether it's the legacy we leave to future generations. I mean, musically huge. I mean, how many people do you listen to that they're not with us anymore, and yet their music and their art lives on and will continue to inspire generations? So like, even and especially I think through our art, relationship connection, but like our art has such a potential to really impact people and to change their perspectives and their lives forever. And maybe that goes on for, you know, I would hope that our art has impact for a long time, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like that's why most of us make things
Mm-hmm.
is for, and that's something that we've talked about before. Like, if we're making things and no one's seeing them,
Mm-hmm.
then it feels kind of weird, but are we making them for ourselves and that kind of stuff?
Oh
I
yeah,
think
that balance.
that big, yeah, but I think that we definitely are making things because we want to connect with others. And it's like not only for other people, but for ourselves, that we want to make, or at least for me,
Yeah,
like I want to make other people feel like they're not alone. But in
absolutely.
doing that, I want to feel like I'm not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that whole, when you're on your deathbed, what do you want to be thinking about that you've done in your life? And I think for me, that goal is knowing that I helped people feel that they're not alone in this world and I connected with them.
Absolutely. I always, because I struggled with mental health in the past and I continue to struggle with mental health. Um, and I remember being in a time where I was like, I don't, I don't want to die. I just don't want to like wake up, you know? And then I remember having this thought of like, one day I'll be better. I won't be in this place anymore. And I will know how to speak to people who also have this thing. Maybe not exactly like what I have, but like, and I kind of saw in my mind, because I see, like I relate a lot to metaphor and pictures. And so I saw this toolbox in my mind. And I was like, I want to use everything that I have gone through and put it as a tool in my toolbox, that hopefully, and there are certain tools in my toolbox that I don't want to have to use. I don't want to bring those out, because bringing those out means that I am in the trenches. But I want to have them in my toolbox so that I can make things from it. That informs me of what I'm doing, where I'm going in my art, and brings like a life and a dimension to my art that I wouldn't have had otherwise had I not had to use that tool. And then also use that tool to help others create tools for their toolbox. And I don't know what it was. Like, once I thought about that our suffering is not for nothing, that's when I was like, it didn't take the mental health issues away, but it definitely made it more bearable at that point. And so I think at the end of my life, if I can say I put as many tools in my toolbox as I could, and I helped others cultivate their toolbox, like mic drop. What I don't want is to be like, you could have used these tools, but you chose not to. You were stingy with your tools.
I love
Does that make sense?
that. Yeah, I love that so much. If everything kind of comes back to that mission in general as a creative, at least I think that, I don't want to speak for every creative in the world, but it does feel like that's the mission and that we're all kind of after, really. And as songwriters, as people who, you know, make art, as people who are trying desperately to reach out of themselves and connect and, touch other people's lives, that brings everything into perspective. Because one of the reasons that we're talking about this today is because we were talking about this last week when I was there, and I said, I don't know, maybe I want to audition um for Broadway, because I don't feel like I would want to be a lead or anything. Not that I have a choice in the matter, really, but I just would love to, maybe, I think, march on stage and point and say, look at her, she's wicked, and leave and wear a weird hat. Like, that sounds cool.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm also like, do I actually want that? So that's a big thing. And you were like, well, do you feel like when you're on your deathbed, you'll wish that you had done that? So here's the tricky thing for me. Like, I don't know if y'all relate to this, but I feel like that about everything. So my dilemma is that I want to do everything. I want to go everywhere and do everything. And my goals feel like, well, yeah, of course I want to do that. I want to do everything. But on my deathbed, am I going to look back and wish that I had auditioned? I feel like the answer is so complicated, but the deep dives that I've been kind of doing and thinking about is that it has to be that if my deathbed goals are connection, does it matter if it was in that way or not? So it's like, whoa, do I wish that I did that? I would love to try every weird food and do all the weird things. But does that mean I didn't like consume enough if I died not trying crickets or whatever? So that's a weird analogy, but saying like, it doesn't have to be that thing for me to accomplish those goals for myself. And I've worked with a lot of people. I know a lot of people who are, if only, and I wish I could have been a contender and all this. And it's like, isn't the work so much deeper than that one thing you wish you'd done? It's really more to do with what did I do overall in my life to connect. So I'm like, it doesn't have to be Broadway. It doesn't have to be a #1 single. It doesn't have to be this or that. I mean, that's like, in a way, being like, if I don't win the lottery, what was my life worth?
Well, yeah. Well, and it's so much of that is completely out of your control. You can't control whether you're on Broadway or win the lottery or, XYZ. And I do feel like a lot of us have bucket list things that are out of our control. So we're almost setting ourselves up for failure if we don't reach those. So I think it almost like you shining your spotlight and your attention on the things that are within your control, like connecting with other people and making crap, not crap, but like making crap.
Sometimes we connect over how shitty my art is.
I mean, but like making things in general, like those are things that you have a direct influence over. Those are within your control as much as anything is within our control. I mean, do we really have control? That's another podcast.
So it little dip into heavier. So I used to work for hospice, and I was in the office part of things, and so I heard a lot of nurses and people talking about that process that is a part of life, which is the end of our life. My mom is a chaplain, and she does a lot of work at hospitals. And a lot of what she does is sit with people and pray with them and sing to them while they pass away. And she said that one of the hardest things in the year, she's been doing this since I was 15, I think, which was a while. And
like last year.
Yeah, right. But she was telling me the hardest. She feels like the hardest one that she had to. You know what I'm saying? The hardest step that she experienced was someone that she knew. And she said, you know, she was going through something. The woman had to make a decision on whether or not, because she was completely with it, she wanted to not have a trach anymore or still have it. And if she chose not to, she would die. And she chose to not be kept alive anymore. And she said and it makes me like, ooh, but she said the last thing that she wanted to do was that everyone had sent her cards while she was sick, because she'd been sick for a while, and she wanted to read all the cards before they took out the trach. And it's like, uh, like so much of what we do to connect with other people is what we all need in our lives, in the last bit of our lives. Thinking about, there in hospice, there were people that they wouldn't be there really, but they would wait until they knew their son was there or they knew their husband was there. They would wait, and not even consciously. The connection of things means the most. That's really all we have. And I think as artists, what we give is that connection. What we crave is that connection. And I think, not to be like, what is on your bucket list? And then be like, what about your, but that I told you, I'm like Wednesday Addams, like I can't stop myself from being like, well, let's talk about how, but I think it is like, if there was something that I wish I did before I die, that's a great thing, right? Like an accomplishment, and that's a good thing to go after. But I think really when it comes down to it, it's about connection. And I think that's a flowery way also to be like, what we do doesn't matter, like how we do it. Yeah. But what is actually done is what matters.
Right. Absolutely. Right. No, I think that's totally right on. It really does put things into perspective as far as like, I worry so much like, oh, my house is messy and so-and-so is coming over and like, I'm not going to be thinking about that. I don't really care about that in the end. What I'm afraid of when I'm cleaning stress cleaning my house is disconnection. Because what I'm afraid of is somebody coming over, judging me about my house, and then saying that's not the kind of person I want to be friends with. So like if we dig at the thing, it's, even though it looks like I'm worried about my house, or I'm worried about being in a public setting and feeling overwhelmed or whatever it is, I think if we dig a little deeper, it's almost always about disconnection and the fear of not being understood or being shunned by people. It was okay. So a friend of mine right before the pandemic was like, okay, we are good friends. Let's do ugly dinner parties. I was like, what are ugly dinner parties? And she was like, it's where we don't clean anything. And we have each other over with our families and we act like it's like just a normal day. And we eat dinner together. And at first I was like, no, this is terrible. You're going to see my toilets and you're going to see my floors and blah. And then I was like, no, this is putting priorities where they go, right? Because so much I prioritize like, well, how am I coming across and how am I doing that? No, it's saying connection with you trumps any of those superficial things. Not that I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting a clean house or anything like that, but like understanding that. And there's been several times when I've been doing things like I'm so focused on sewing or whatever it is that I'm doing, and somebody will be like, reaching out to me, hey, I'm struggling, or it might not even be that they're struggling. It might be like, hey, I would, do you want to come to this thing right now? Or like, come to lunch with me. And I'm like, oh, I'm right in the middle of doing something. And I have to say to myself, where's the connection? Because I'm going to choose the connection over the thing. I mean, and you can't make a hard, fast rule, because sometimes you need to be like, I need to get
Focus.
stuff done. Yeah, I need to focus. But like, so many times it's like, I want to choose people over the things, because people are the point.
Mm-hmm. I'm having a little revelation over here.
Oh,
So
revelate to me.
so I I think this happens with music all the time and art all the time, where we start wrapping ourselves around, you need to connect with your audience is the reveal here, that finding the people that and searching for those people and connecting with those people. And I'm not talking about making your art change itself to fit what other people want, but more in that, once we've made these things that we have to connect with really deeply, then finding the audience for who also connects with that is the whole point. And so if you have wrapped yourself up so tightly within having to make things perfect, that you don't even release it, then you don't get that connection piece.
Yes.
It's not relatable to your people, because that's not what you relate to. So often I think we get really wrapped up in holding on to things, and the whole point is connecting with other people and
Right.
letting that be your guiding light throughout releasing music, throughout finding your audience, throughout, who am I going to pitch my art to, or it's like looking for that connection or reward. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it's like, it sounds like duh, but I really feel that the simplicity of that, it's so like duh. Really
Well,
good
and
way.
having that as the focus, just that one little shift in perception of being like, oh, it's about me and my art. No, actually, it's about connection. Does everything. I mean, like, I remember times when I've been on stage, I'm so nervous before going on singing or whatever it is that I was doing. And I was like, no, I'm shifting this away from me and making it about connection. That whole point is to connect with my audience and make a human moment, or facilitate a human moment happening. Like, nerves don't, like, go on,
Mhm.
because I'm not the point. It's not about me. It's about that connection that you make with others through whatever medium you're using.
Mhm. Yeah, so it is.
So,
Yeah, I think that's so great, and that brings the. It's not, or I, not that the point of all of this and bucket list things and deathbed dream, whatever things, is like whatever you're doing is pointless without connection. I guess, like, that's what I think, in a little bit, but it is like, keep your dreams, but keep in mind that really that's what we're all after, is our community of people. And when at the end of the day, how did I reach out to them?
right.
And like you said, make that unimpeded by my own anxieties as much as possible, right? Did that make sense?
No, totally.
Okay.
And then to take that a step, like, digging even deeper, like, what is a connection with someone else if I can't even connect with my own self? So turning that back, and, and does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like being able to, I feel like our connection with others is so much less impeded once things at home, meaning within our own selves, are safe and kind. And so I definitely, like we were talking about the other day, like, I want to look back and say, I didn't miss it. I had an opportunity to understand and get to discover who she is, she being me. And I don't want to waste that. And I'm not talking like, egotistical, like I'm the only person in the room that matters. None of that. I'm talking like, did I discover her? Was I kind to her? Was I gentle? Was I nurturing? Because I think making art from a place of wholeness and a place of, like we talked about earlier on earlier podcasts, like worth is off the table. Worth is already assured from square one. But making sure that the connection with me is stable, not only stable, but like life-giving. Then it's like from that place of wholeness comes the ability to connect with others in a way that I think is just, I don't know. What do you think about that?
I love that. I mean, honestly, while you were saying that, I had this vision of, so if we're trying to kind of drive ourselves toward creativity all the time, and we have that within us, if there's a battle that we're like, separating ourselves a little bit and saying, I have this vision of like uh, an elephant at the circus, right? And the task master and like beast master in this situation being our little old elephant here is like, I have a life to live. I have things that if there was consciousness, this may be a rough metaphor, but it
No,
makes
I'm
sense
here
in my
for
mind.
it.
Okay, well, follow me on my elephant journey.
Yep.
And then the other one of us is the, come on, we've got people to make happy. Get out and make people happy, you idiot. Like push, 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 go make people happy, go do this thing. And the relationship that you have with yourself and the strong, beautiful, happy, life-giving part of you is being beaten down by this energy that says, go do this thing. If you don't have a good relationship, now listen, I'm not for the future when we're famous, I'm not advocating for that elephants actually want to go out and do this stuff. But you hear what I'm saying, that if we're putting on this show to make people happy, to bring them in, to give them life, and then the source of that joy and the source of that thing is being completely shouted at to create something that will make people happy. If we have to have the relationship with that part of us that is the joy and be beautiful to that person, or else what's the, like, how are we supposed to actually genuinely make something that brings people joy if we have to task that part of us so hard and be so unkind to that part of us? Nurturing that, it makes sense that if we spend all our time beating it down, it's going to be really hard to bring it out when we need it and be like, now go play. So that's, I don't know, like while you were talking about that, I kind of viewed it like, as a performer, as an artist, as, someone who's making things, if we're not having a good relationship with that happy, playful part of ourselves and telling her she's wrong and stupid and she's never going to be able to do everything she needs to do and wants to do, how are we expecting to bring that out and give that to other people and connect with that thing, right?
100%. Yep.
So yeah, I think that's a very it's like a beautiful thing because you live a more peaceful and happy life with that in mind. But it also makes you more productive. Let's be perfectly honest, you catch more flies with honey within yourself also. So I don't know. I think a lot of us start praising ourselves for how mean we are to ourselves while we're trying to make things. And that shit ain't gonna work.
Well, we talk about bucket lists, and there's so much about like, I want to be on an adventure. Like, I want to go out and I want to see and I want to understand and I want to like, I want to, chart the uncharted or whatever it is. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. there's also a whole universe within ourselves that we get to explore. Not only do we have to explore, like we get to explore. Like I get to figure out who I am. I get to figure out ways to fall in love with her and to bring out the best in her. And like, I think it's important to realize like there's a whole world out there. There's also a whole world in here that we get to explore. And we'll make mistakes, like we'll two steps forward, one step back. Like that's how I feel all the time with my relationship with me. But like, I don't know. Like our insides are just as big, if not bigger, than our outsides.
I love that. That's so great and so true. It's, I think it's so scary too.
It's so scary.
That, like, you know, so the first time I got in the ocean, I freaked out and I did not anticipate that. I had, you know, little, not scuba, snorkeling stuff. And I put my head like down to look, and I felt suddenly like there was a whole planet under me that I didn't know at all. And I feel like that when it comes to sometimes like exploring myself, where it's like something's revealed to me, and I'm like, oh God, that's like, there's some sharks in here. I don't know that I had never seen that before. That's how exciting. How
Oh yeah.
terrifying.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's totally terrifying. And we live in a world where, you know, especially for women, a woman loves herself and is confident in who she is and where worth is off the table and she's not striving. That's terrifying. Like, whoa, whoa. And so I think our society sometimes beats her down and is like, oh no, like, look, don't you want to have this 2-inch waist? And don't you da 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 da? Like, our culture keeps us distracted into wanting these things. And I'm talking to myself so hard right now. Like, I'm just like, okay, listen to what you're saying. But like keeps us distracted because like who could she be, what could she do if she wasn't worried about her weight or wasn't worried about whether her bangs are falling the right way, you know, or whatever it is, or her if her house is perfect or not, or if she's keeping up with the Joneses.
Totally. Yep. That's an overwhelming thought. Yeah, I love it. And I think, you know, there's so much pressure, and we've talked about so much pressure on women. Talk about an entire like decades worth of stuff to talk about within that structure, and in the world of creativity, and being, shoved down. I think, I was talking to Seth last week too about that. I feel like, and I can't speak to this because I'm not a dude, but within the realm of creativity for men, I think it's really hard too, because you're expected to be still masculine, which means you shouldn't be very sensitive, and you can't have any kind of like mental like issues within this. You're supposed to just like do your thing. And I wonder how that dichotomy works too, with men having to separate those things out and be like, okay, so men categorically, or like whatever the word is I'm looking for, have to be the provider for the family. They have to buy the house. They have to do all this stuff, and they have to do it without thinking about their feelings or complaining about anything and diving into all of that. Like, our dude friends have some work to do in there too. I would imagine. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I interrupted you.
I would imagine that there's so much to dig into within that, and see like how much am I worried about when I'm in group situations, if I'm being, too genuine about this, or I'm being too whatever. I would imagine that happens a lot. We just don't see it as much.
Well, and
But
to
I don't know.
be artistic is to be sensitive in terms of having little like satellite dishes on us. It's like, oh, that's interesting, and being sensitive to stimuli, and so then to tell a whole half of the population that you can't be that way when really that is who you are and your identity, and like how you're able to, I just, yeah, the whole thing about men needing to be hyper masculine and not show your feelings is just, that would be horrible. That would be terrible to live under. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
We've all got so much work to do to connect with ourselves
Yeah.
and connect with each other. And I'm excited about this talk today because I feel like it brings some clarity and relief, at least for me, about when I'm at the end of my life, am I going to look back and be proud of myself or wish I'd done things? And I think it almost makes me realize that every day I am really trying to strive for the thing that is the most important to me, which is connection.
Right.
And that the vehicle for that I've chosen is creativity. And I think that I have that in my vision. And I feel proud of myself. When we talked about this last week, I was like, I'm lost. Honestly, it felt like, God, I don't know. I want to do everything. And I think on my deathbed, I'll just be beating myself up for everything I didn't do that I wanted to do. But shifting that perspective slightly to see that at the core, what we're actually doing, what we're really trying to do. That's important.
Is connection. And yeah, everything else is cherries, I like to say. Like everything, if once you have the meat and the potatoes of connection with yourself and connection with others, everything else is cherries on the top. Not that you would put cherries on meat and potatoes or anything, but everything else is cherries. Yeah. Ooh, Emily, let's talk about the things that are coming up.
Oh, yes. We have exciting things happening. So I love that it's going to be this really vague thing. It's not a real announcement yet because we're shifting. So next month, we've got some really exciting things starting. We will be kind of transferring to a different platform / platforms where you can listen to the podcast. We are still going to keep a live element within our podcast because we really want to talk to you guys. It's really important. We just spent the last 40 minutes talking about connection. That's literally the point of this. We want to connect with you. So we'll be shifting. That is an exciting thing. Tell them more things, Carrie.
Yeah, so we're also going to bring on some guests because we have to know, like, we need to hear from other artists, other creators, because, Emily and I have our own processes that we love to talk about, but also we want to know, how are other artists and creators doing this? How are they doing the thing? How are they approaching their art? How are they approaching all the things that they make? So that's going to come soon. But yeah, just so you know, we've heard you. We've had a couple of people reach out and say, we would love to be able to listen to this while mowing the lawn and have my screen off on my phone. And we can't do that right now because it's an Instagram Live. We see you, we hear you, totally. So we are going to start posting we're going to have a feed for podcasts. So we'll have it anywhere that you listen to podcasts. So you can just listen to us and binge our program, our show.
It's the program.
That's right. Whenever you want to, and with your screen off. So super excited. We're gonna get more high tech, and hopefully that helps us being able to connect with you better.
And honestly, when we first started doing this, just about a month ago, we were like, we're having these conversations anyway. Let's have these conversations where we can share with other creatives, and then we realized that this is what we love.
Oh yeah.
Like this project is so exciting to me. We're like, okay, instead of just having a live, let's actually have a podcast. Let's dive in and do this thing. So now we have a website that is like totally live now, right?
Yep, it's totally live.
Honestly,
And just oh, sorry, go ahead.
.com. So if you want to check it out, there are a couple pictures, including a picture of us on the day we met, which is adorable.
We were 11. On our way to camp in the back of the church van.
Yeah.
Also on the website, we have started a Patreon. This is no pressure at all, but I love to support the creators that I believe in. And so if you are liking what we do and you want to contribute and support, please feel free to head on over to honestlydearlistener.com and click support.
Awesome. Oh, next month, just so you know, with our guests coming up, topics include things that I'm so excited, including boundaries for creatives with working with other people, and also new parents and parents in general, maintaining your creativity when that is what you do, while getting to raise people. So I'm really stoked about that. I also want to know if you guys would shoot us a message, DM us on Instagram. I am Emily Sparkle Chicken Hatch. And where can they DM you?
Gatlin and King. Also, we have a contact page on our website, honestlydearlistener.com. And yeah, all of those go to us. We would love to hear your thoughts, your suggestions, ways that we can improve the show, ways to make it better, things you want to talk about, things you want to hear about, etc.
Yeah, like are you coming up with a roadblock a lot right now? Mine change all the time. So if there's something that you're like, hey, let's talk about this, or revelations that you've had that you're excited about, share them. We want to know. So let us know. You can also comment on our stuff on Instagram, but if you want to just hit us up, email us, whatever. We're really excited to hear from you because we care about you.
Well, Emily, as always, such a pleasure.
All right. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.